Good evening, everyone across the world, sports fans. I mean, anyone that pulled up a chair to tune in this evening, I'm saying good evening, especially to you as well, because when there's a conversation with MossBurgh, you know me, I'm excited. I'm anticipating the conversation like the playoff that we see, like a sports Super Bowl, like the NBA Finals. And this evening's conversation, I'm bringing to you is Melissa Graham, one of the great educators across the world. And I don't want to keep anyone waiting. I'm going to bring Melissa right in. And this is Melissa Graham, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining me this evening, Miss Graham. And could you tell the people a little bit about yourself as well to
Sure.
introduce you?
Thanks for having me. I am obviously Melissa Graham. I am a teacher in Columbus City Schools in my 20th year. Um, Not all 20 years in Columbus City Schools, but I'm originally from Newark, right down the road, and uh, went to college at Mount Union and moved to North Carolina to spend my first 10 years teaching down there. So I've been back up here for 10 years.
And the crazy thing is when we see, women naturally as a gentleman, you wouldn't think someone is in the sports as much as you are.
Mhm.
And I had the chance and opportunity through the busyness of my work schedule and seeing the interview last week with yourself, post game, and Mr. Brown at WTP for Life, who put us all together. And when I got the text about that you wanted to have this conversation and talk your talk on your sports teams respectively, I was thrilled. I was anticipating it like a basketball game for myself in high school. And
Right.
I'm glad that you were able to join me this evening. And we're not going to cut the chase. We're going to give the fans what they've been wanting to see, what they've been asking for. And I know you are a fan of that team that everyone was talking about not making a playoff. I felt they should be in the playoff. I went to this place myself personally for my birthday. What made you a Notre Dame fan? Talk to us about this.
I'm born and raised a Notre Dame fan. I was never, I've been around football my entire life. My uncle coached at Newark Catholic from 1971 to 1991 and won 7 state titles. And so I was that little girl that was on the field. My dad would take me to practice. I was on the field with the guys. When I was little, I woke up and would go downstairs, and my dad and I would sit on the chair. I'm like 4, 5, 6 years old and watch ESPN highlights of football games uh, and basketball games. And so it's just something that I've always been around. I was a cheerleader in high school, and I always laughed because I don't have the athletic ability to play basketball, or I probably would have played basketball. But I was the one that everybody looked to, like, to even know what offense or defense was. And so I was on the field to be closer to the action, not so much. I mean, I enjoyed cheering. Don't get me wrong, but I was there because I was in the action. I was on the field. I was on the court. I knew what was going on, and so it was fun to kind of pass my knowledge along to the rest of my teammates in that aspect. But growing up, my dad is a huge Notre Dame fan, um, and don't get me wrong, he loves Ohio State too. And I've only been to one Ohio State game in my entire life, and that was when Rob Kelly was playing, who played for my uncle at Newark Catholic. And so that was, God, almost 30 years ago, if not a little bit longer, when Robbie was playing. And so I, I've just always been a Notre Dame fan. And it's something that, people are always like, oh, you just like winning teams. And especially when people hear that I like Duke as well. And there's a story there as well. But I've just always been a Notre Dame fan. I grew up um, loving Lou Holtz and seeing him on the sideline, crouch down, picking the grass, and when fields were
Yeah.
grass. So, um, and just always being around the sport. Notre Dame was my team and has always been my team. And through all of the ups and downs that the Irish bring us year in and year out, they've taught me a lot. They've gotten me through some times, and
Yes,
uh,
definitely, definitely.
it's just one of those things. I remember one year for my birthday, my dad took me to see Rudy in the theater. And until this day, I'm 42 years old. When I see Rudy, I cry at the exact same 6 spots in the movie every time. And so, it's just kind of one of those things, and it's, just the history behind it, I think, is special too. And a lot of programs can play the history card. But I just take a lot of pride in being a Notre Dame fan, and I can dish it out, and I can take it. So I think that throws a lot of people off too, because here I am, a, a woman who spits facts and will come at you
Yes.
with some knowledge. And people, a lot of times, guys are like, "Oh, you just made that. You don't really know what you're talking about." And so, knowing Mr. Brown and working together at school, he's kind of learned that I do know what I'm talking about sometimes. So we get into quite a
Yes.
few conversations.
I'm sure those could be some definite heated debates, being the Notre Dame
Yes.
woman and him being a Texas Longhorn man,
Yes.
and we know how those could be.
Yeah.
It's a special thing as well. When I heard that when we were texting, you're Notre Dame, you
Hmm.
Duke.
Hmm.
Actually, my brother is a Notre Dame diehard, just as yourself,
Hmm.
and he bleeds Duke blue and blue through and through.
Hmm.
And I was just so amazed to really, tap in and learn some of those things because, like you just mentioned about the tradition, the history, I think a lot of people, yes, they have their own history, but until you're actually, a visitor, you're on a recruit visit and you see the history, that's behind Notre Dame. I think it's a different understanding, and when you hear people speak about it, walking the streets as I did when I went down for that visit and seeing the game. So I could totally understand your feeling and what you mean when it speaks on the history. And tapping into when you mentioned growing up as a young girl in football, seeing it every day, being 5 years old, sitting on the couch watching ESPN with your pops, as I call my dad, if you don't mind me saying
No, you're
pops.
fine.
Talk to me about those times. How was your school days? How was your weeks? How was that battle as a young lady being into sports? I can't remember the name of the movie. I'm trying to think of it, maybe too hard, but it gives me that thought of that movie with that young lady that loved sports,
Blind
and she
or
was
not the
right
blind
there with
side.
her dad.
I know exactly. And now I can't think of it. Remember the Titans. And her
Yes,
dad is the
yes,
coach.
yes.
Yeah. I am that little girl, and now I'm just grown. Um, you know, again, being around my uncle and my dad, being not so much on the coaching staff, but being involved with my uncle JD at Notre Catholic for years, growing up around football. To this day, I call it me and my group of old men. But obviously, once I was cheering in high school, I couldn't go to different football games every night. But
Yeah.
there's a group of us, and my dad including, and we go to a different football game every Friday night, a different high school football game every Friday night, and we go across this state. One of my kind of favorite stories is to tell, and people probably don't even know where this is at, but um, one of the Hoyne brothers was playing for St. Henry, and they were playing in Versailles,
Mm.
at Versailles. And if you've never been to Versailles, the high school stadium butts right up against a neighborhood. And so it,
Wow.
it's they're now D7, D6 schools, but at the time they were D6 schools. And it was standing room only, and we drove 2.5, 3 hours on a Friday after school to get to this game. And we couldn't get in the stadium. So we walked into somebody's backyard with the fence of the goalpost, standing there eating hot dog. Like it was like a
Man.
tailgate party. And I'm like, it might have been a playoff game. And I'm maybe 13, 14. I might have been in middle school, standing with this group of guys, my dad and the guys, watching a high school football game. And so it's just something that I've always been passionate about. My dad always, he takes the blame. He's like, I did this to you. I'm every time, cause I'll go at it with anybody. And he's like, yeah, this one's on me. Sorry guys. Like I created this. And so I kind of always joke with them, like, hey, you did this, not me. I did not choose this life. You chose it for me. But it's
That's
just
just,
something that we've done, back when bowl games mattered and bowl games were bowl games, and everybody was still playing in them. New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, it was sun up to sundown, sitting on the couch, eating snacks all day, watching those New Year's Eve six and the New Year's Six games. And so it's just something that I've been really lucky to have my dad through. And again, he always kind of laughs and he's like, this is my fault. And he takes credit for it all the time. And we just kind of joke, but it's just something that, it, in my field, trauma and stress is real, and I take a lot of that home with me, and so it's something that I can do to kind of decompress until I'm, all up in it and I'm screaming at the TV and things like that. There was one day I called my dad during a Notre Dame game. I want to say 63 times before half. Just play, scores, flat, and he just laughs because he also knows that if he doesn't answer, then I'm going to continue to call because now I'm mad. Like I wasn't mad, and now I'm mad because I needed to tell you how I was feeling about that situation, and I needed you to acknowledge it, but you're ignoring me, and so he's kind of created that monster as well.
Wow, that's just amazing to hear. Like, when we think of sports, I think the one thing that we fail to realize is sports pertain to so many things, not in just life, but every day. You can wake up and see a highlight on TV. It can make you think about a time, like you said, with your dad being little and growing up, and it builds something special, And if it wasn't for sports, I think, it would be a whole totally different world. So, it's appreciative again to hear these stories in this conversation, and I appreciate you again. And another question
it's getting weird now because I'm old enough that players that I started watching way back when are now having children playing for teams, and it's just like I'm like, oh, ooh, that makes you feel a little something. But I'm just
definitely a sports guy. Now, when we talk about your Notre Dame Fighting Irish, we know it made you a fan growing up with pops and uncle and just being that sports guy. Who's your all-time favorite football player from Notre Dame?
This is a tough one. I would say I don't remember watching Jerome Bettis play. I mean, I'm sure I did. I don't recall it, but I mean, obviously he's one of the greatest running backs to ever play at Notre Dame, But I would say probably in a more modern era would have to be Brady Quinn. Brady and I are the same age. He graduated from Kaufman the year I graduated from Newark. And then another from that kind of class I really, really loved Tommy Zbikowski and Jeff Samardzija. And those were just, the three guys that were an epitome of Notre Dame to me. Would probably be my top three. And probably in the most recent era. I mean, there's a ton of guys that I love and will always, Jeremiah Love is obviously right up there this year as going to be one of the top running backs in the country this year, not even just at Notre Dame and ever. I remember going to a blue and gold game in the spring game and watching I can't think of his name. It just left me that quick. It'll come to me. But he was a quarterback, and it was like, oh my God, I'm watching. And now he's our director of player operations. And so it's just one of those things that I'm just like, and his kid's a walk-on the team now. So it's just really, we're on Paulus is who I'm thinking of.
Yep, I was about to say, yep. I think that's what it was. Yeah, I thought it was a guy they had talked about when I went to the North Carolina State game, but it is Ron Powers. You're right.
Yeah. So, we've just had so many great guys go through the program, and I think that's something that also keeps me a Notre Dame fan. Is, we've lost some people to the portal, and we'll get some people to the portal, but in this day and age, who's not? But it's just, I feel like we're really a cleanly run program, and we have expectations, and that starts from the ground up.
Totally agree. And when you mention the name Brady Quinn, Zbikowski, Jeff Samardzija, I think people forget about those three guys that played, years at Notre Dame was definitely, key players. I think will be, greats respectively when Notre Dame continue to build that shrine as they have been throughout the years.
Kyle Rudolph, who played at Cincinnati Elder, and he's given a lot back to Cincinnati Elder in the past few years after his retirement with the Vikings. So, there's a pipeline, especially to the Cincinnati Catholic League schools, back to Terry Faust's days coaching in Cincinnati and then going to Notre Dame to coach. And so there's just a constant they understand Ohio high school football and try to get that pipeline from Ohio to Notre Dame.
Definitely, I agree. They definitely do, and seems like they like that Kaufman school because I know they had a guy. I think it was his name was in Duzier that played at
Mm-hmm.
Notre
Yep.
Dame. I forget, and he played at Cincinnati. And I mean, I think that was a great talent for him to have so many years in the NFL. Who would have thought you go to Dublin Kaufman and
Mm-hmm.
this kid goes to Notre Dame?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So it's just a great thing to see a school like Notre Dame when they're coming in Columbus, Ohio,
Mm-hmm.
and they're picking kids and hand recruiting them.
Mm-hmm.
See, bus man, Notre Dame. I'm telling you, if you go down there for a visit, you will definitely love it. So I'm just saying, man, go visit that university.
A lot of people probably forget that Lorenzo Styles committed to us and played for us for 2 years before he transferred back to Ohio State.
So,
And we were really close to getting Sonny too, but I think Sonny really wanted to follow in Dad's footsteps and go to Ohio State. And then Lorenzo kind of just didn't pan out for us at a wide receiver position. And I don't think really wanted to play defense for us. And so, he opted to transfer. So,
and when you speak about things like that, the coach that you have there, I think, has made a difference in these type of movements with Notre Dame.
mm-hmm.
When you're talking about big time players coming in as 5 stars, transfer portal, former 5 stars, or they may drop a star being in that portal, but he brings them back up to that prominent 5 star,
Mm-hmm.
and they go on these 10-win seasons. How long do you believe Marcus Freeman will remain at Notre Dame? And I did get the picture from you with Coach Freeman. I'm not for sure if that was at a basketball game that you were at. That was a great picture, by the way. I'm sure you got many stories to tell as well. But
yeah, I was actually I took 2 sweatshirts. I was actually in South Bend for the Duke Notre Dame basketball game. And so I was sitting with a player's parents and ended up moving to the student section because they were on break. And Coach Freeman was there. And so I pulled out my Notre Dame sweatshirt, did an outfit change. And it was funny because I'm like, I walk over and, there's Duke fans sitting beside him on the sideline. And I'm like, Coach. And they were like, you just changed your sweatshirt. I said, I'm not stupid. Like, I'm not going to have a conversation with him. And they were like, that's hilarious. Because I had, obviously from Notre Dame football, going to Notre Dame football games, I had my stadium bag. And so it's Notre Dame football stadium bag. Because when I'm in Durham and I'm at Cameron, I just take in my little belt bag. I don't need a big bag. I'm not carrying blankets. I'm not carrying, you know what I mean? And things like that for football. And so it was hilarious. And he was the sweetest guy. Took a picture. At that time, one of my friend's sons was being recruited by Notre Dame. And so I kind of name dropped him a little bit, and he ended up signing with NC State. But it was just, I have no fear when it comes to things like that. I was there by myself. I mean, I go to Notre Dame football games by myself. I get up in the morning, I drive, I go to the game, I drive home. And so, it was that's how I got my picture with Marcus.
Appreciate it.
Kind of back to the question as far as how long I think Marcus will be there. I am not a Brian Kelly fan. I wasn't a Brian Kelly fan when he was there for 10 years. He set us up for success, unfortunately. And chose to for greener pastures and that dollar sign, which we see where that led him. But he did have some 10-win seasons, and he brought Freeman on as an assistant coach and as his defensive coordinator. And I think Coach Freeman learned a lot about building a program. BK was not known for that. The boosters did not like BK, but BK won 10 games a year and got us. He got us to our first BCS game. He got us into our first championship game. Big game Brian is big game Brian. Like, he never won that big game. Coach Freeman hasn't there yet, but he's gotten us a lot closer. We weren't getting blown out. People forget, like, we're just 1 year out of being in the national championship game. And to get there, we had to win 3 major bowl games. We played Penn State, Georgia, and Indiana. Who knew Indiana was going to be what they were with Coach Sig there right now? But I think what, and the word Marcus is wanted by everybody. Who wouldn't want a young coach who is a motivator and a player's coach who wants to see his kids grow? There's a series on Peacock that they did in NBC Sports called Here Come the Irish. And there's clips on there just this year at the beginning of the season when a lot of people don't realize how close the quarterback race was between CJ Carr and Kenny Minchie. A lot of people, and we lost Steve Angeli to the transfer portal to Syracuse, but a lot of people forget how crucial Steve Angeli was to get us to that Ohio State championship game last year. He saved our season when Riley went down. But there's clips of Coach Freeman talking to Kenny Minchie and letting him know, we're going with CJ. You're going to be our backup, but I want you to know it was close, and I want you to know that I love you and I respect you, and your hard work is going to eat, and I understand you're biding your time. And Kenny is 20. He's been there. He's backed up Sam Hartman. He's backed up Riley Leonard, and he was playing behind Steve Angeli last year too. So he's bought time, and he's bought into the program, and he wanted to be a Notre Dame quarterback. A lot of kids would have transferred out after that first year of having to back up and play behind a quarterback that we brought in the portal. But he hung around, and Kenny leaves. They dap it up, hug each other, and Kenny leaves, and Marcus just plops down on the couch in his office, and you can just see the emotion that he had, that he just had to break that kid's heart and ruin that kid's dream. And like, he took it personally too. And then, the next scene is him letting CJ Carr know that, you're QB1. And CJ's reaction is, how did Kenny take the news? Does Kenny know yet? And Marcus is like, yeah, and it's just the culture that is the difference, I think, from Brian Kelly era, those 10-win seasons, to Coach Freeman's 10-win era seasons. I hold grudges like nobody else. I'm half Catholic. I'm a Notre Dame fan. I'm still pissed about losing to Northern Illinois, and that was 2 years ago at this point. We went 0-2 to begin the year, and I didn't step foot on campus this year because I was mad.
Hold on. I don't mean to cut you off. You said you're a season ticket holder and you didn't step foot on campus.
I do not have season tickets. No, but okay. I go to 90% of the home games. But I did not step foot on campus this year because I was so frustrated at the effort on those first two games. And I knew if I saw our defensive coordinator in person, I'd probably end up in jail because I was going after him. I was mad. But Marcus took and a lot of people forget too, like 18 to 22-year-olds now are not the 18 to 22-year-olds from 20 years ago, from 10 years ago. Lou Holtz could rip a kid apart and be praised for it, and the kid would respect him, change his attitude, turn it around, play how he was meant to be played. And now, in the season of participation trophies, and you made me sad, and I'm pouting, and I can leave and go make money elsewhere. It's hard. I have a friend who was a high school coach in North Carolina. He's in his 36th year. He retired. They rehired him to fill in for a position that for the coach that took his place, left unexpectedly. And he's like, I don't know how I've done it so long. It's not like it was, when I first started. So kind of having that background knowledge too, but I really think that Marcus Freeman wants to win a national championship with Notre Dame, and I think he's going to build it, and he's going to do it.
Into it. You ran yourself right into that next question as well about the championship.
Yeah.
Will Notre Dame finally get a championship in the upcoming season, and why? What's your thoughts on that?
We are so close. We were so close last year. We had Jeremiah Love that was at 60%, and without him sacrificing his entire body on that 4th and 1 at the goal line, on that, we were on the 3rd or 4th yard line to get that first down. That shows you right there that the kids want to win for their program and for their coach, and for each other, which I think a lot of people forget about too, especially in this day and age of the portal and NIL and all of that these kids came to Notre Dame because they wanted to play for the program. they wanted to play for the golden helmet. They wanted to play for the blue and gold and the gold pants, and they want to play for touchdown Jesus, and they want to play for the fourth quarter, 1812 overture that gets played between the third and fourth quarter. Like, they are there for that. They want to sing second at the Navy game, because if you're singing first, you lost. And so they just want to do it all for each other. And I think that culture shift is something that we've needed so much to get us to that next step. So many people are arguing, oh, you guys have a cupcake schedule and blah. Listen, we're not playing 6 or 8 MAC teams before we play our conference schedule. And we can talk about conferences if you want, but that's a whole different.
That's a whole. We'll bring you back for another conversation.
Whole different situation, in my opinion. Especially now with NIL and portal and the way bowls are working. But I think within the next 3 to 5 years, we're getting it. We've seen kind of what has happened to those big time superstar programs. All the Alabama fans are, oh, now when, oh, in Auburn, oh, you can play players now. And so it's not just Alabama. And we know y'all were doing it before, and now other people are getting to do it. And so it's kind of evening out the playing field. And so, we're seeing teams like Indiana who all of a sudden, Kurt Signetti, not one of my favorites. I think he's kind of a jerk. He comes off like that, and that's just my opinion. But he can coach, and he's coaching 2 and 3 and 4 stars to get the most out of his kids. And look where he's at right now.
We got comments coming in. We appreciate you coming in. We have One Take Zay in the building. Millie Graham been going hard in the trenches. Salute.
That's
we
because
appreciate you joining.
Nice to me. I'll cut him tomorrow.
And we appreciate Official Doe coming in. Appreciate you all tuning in this evening as well. As we are coming up, we got more talk to go. This is only getting started when it comes to the conversation this evening. Like I told you, we're going to go in depth. We tapping into a lot of different teams of your sports, but also we're going to go in depth with a lot more of the conversations within itself as you see this year in the 2026 season. And I wholeheartedly agree with her. If not everything you were saying, like to the T, because when you speak of Notre Dame and Brian Kelly and Freeman, the one thing you mentioned is just the different standards. I think they both done a great job. I think when you make that hire, as we've, like, for example, I know it's early, but when we see a Nick Saban and then you see a Kalen DeBoer come in, people can say what they want. It's, Brian Kelly was who Brian Kelly was at that time. Right. He was the great coach on top.
Right.
That's who And now bringing Freeman in and seeing what Freeman is doing, he's elevating this program.
Absolutely.
Like you said, Notre Dame, right there in the national championship. I say, heck, a play away from winning a national championship in regards to so many ways in that game. And then you could say this year they got snubbed. And as we see the playoff, if we would have had Notre Dame in this playoff, I think we'd be looking at a whole total different Final Four. I think Jeremiah Love, what he brought to the college football world, I think was unexpected to some for Notre Dame. They was waiting for him to do what he do because they knew what they had in Jeremiah Love. And that's why he does his thing with his heart. And if, like you said, the experience of being a fan, being there, you have to go see Touchdown Jesus. You have to see the Golden Dome. You have to be there to believe it. And for myself, I was able and I was fortunate enough, man, thanks to my brother, on my birthday weekend this past year to be able to experience that. And it's one
Player Watch is one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's it made it all. They think I'm a Notre Dame fan here in the podcast group just because of how I speak on it. But it really is that, that beautiful. I would definitely say, man, if you're a kid out there looking for a college to go to, man, you definitely have to take that visit if they offer you that visit. And we have WTP for Life joining us as well. And he said, do you think Freeman will be a lifer at Notre Dame, and end his career there?
I wish. We're not going to be that lucky. I think we're going to get to hold on to him until we get that championship. But I also am not sure that he will leave for the NFL. Notre Dame is a top tier program. He's from Dayton. He played at Heber Heights Wayne. He went to Ohio State. I think if that Ohio State job pops open and his name is thrown in the hat, I think he's gone. And I can't fault him for that. It's his program. That's where he went through, and he, and I can't fault him for that at all. And I think that's respectable that he's, turning down the money from the NFL right now. But I'm not going to lie, Notre Dame got the money too. We got the donors. We got the money. Anything that he was offered was matched and met or above. I promise that, because they believe so deeply in what he's doing at Notre Dame right now. And so, unfortunately, I don't think he's going to be a lifer. I don't think he's going to end his career there. I would love for it to happen. He's one of the youngest coaches in the country still. I mean, I think him and Matt Campbell are just a couple of years apart. And I went to Mount Union with Matt Campbell and Nick Sirianni and Jason Candle, who's now at Toledo. And so I watched them play football at Mount Union. We were in anatomy and physiology together. So it's funny to see people like that be so successful as, they're only a few years older than I am. And I think Coach Freeman is younger than I am. I think he's only 39. And so he's just in his prime right now. And is only going to continue to do better. There aren't bigger programs in Notre Dame right now to coach. Ohio State, sure. Bama, sure, but unless you're Nick Saban, you know what I mean? Like, Nick Saban has taken Alabama, and he should have. It was a dynasty, and he deserves that. And he deserves to be known as Alabama. Maybe Urban Meyer at Florida for what he did, but you got to think of Bobby Bowden at Florida State. Like, people still think of him when you think of Florida State. Just I think that's kind of an issue that we're seeing right now is all of the old souls are done. They're tired, and they should be, you know what I mean? Like, they've given it their all for so many years, and there's really nobody in the ranks to come up. So it's going to be a rough few years, I think, because we've got to give some of these coordinators and younger guys opportunities to coach in big time programs. I think Coach Freeman has done a good job of his staff. Like I said earlier, it took me a while to warm up to Chris Ash as our defensive coordinator after having Al Golden. We had the best defense in the country for 2 years under Al Golden, but then having Mike Denbrock as well coming back to us as a knowledgeable offensive coordinator. A lot of people don't know about our special teams coordinator, but our special teams are top 5 in the country, with the exception of our kicker. God bless. We just need a kicker. But we're not the only one that needs a kicker. But just yards after, we've got a solid staff, and we've got great assistant coaches. Mike Mickens is our DB coach. We just promoted Al Washington to our D-line coach, where he played at Ohio State. And was it D-line? We just promoted him to his actual position where he played with Ohio State and coached at Cincinnati before with Coach Freeman as well. But like, we're moving guys up the ranks, and I think that says a lot too when you can look out. I mean, the college playoff right now has all 4 coaches that coach with Nick Saban at Alabama in some way or another. And so I feel like that's kind of what Marcus wants his legacy to be, is to create those coaches that live up to his potential and kind of take that Notre Dame legacy with them. Kind of what Cignetti's doing right now at Indiana. He learned that, he learned from the best, unfortunately, at Nick Saban. And a lot of people, I think, are kind of shocked that, oh crap, the 4 college coaches in the CFP all coached for him. So,
and that leads me. I know you said that he won't end his career there, But the metaphor to what you just said is the fact that Nick Saban is retired.
Hmm.
And I think seeing that one of his former coaches being in the NFL and being a Bengal fan where Golden is at,
Hmm.
knowing the success that the Bengals had this second half of the latter season with that defense. It could be possible, Miss Graham, that this man could retire at Notre Dame.
Hmm.
I like his chances with what he's built. Being a young, successful coach,
Hmm.
why not end your tenure in your legacy that you've built? And you'll be talked about as in the ranks of a Nick Saban,
Right.
the
Right.
likes of other coaches, even. And I think with you're talking about someone that's born, raised right here in the heart. And I think that's something a lot of people forget. He's born right here in the heart, and he's at a prominent traditional
Hmm.
place in South Bend, Indiana, doing what he does and what he loved. I think it's only right that he leave his legacy right there where he planted it here and took it and carried it those miles over, and he'll still have that, access. And I don't know. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, that's why I think
But
the only possibility of him jumping it would be if Ohio State opens up. I
yeah,
don't think it'll be for an NFL position. I think it would be for Ohio State.
definitely, I agree. And now, not one thing a lot of people don't know is we talked about a little bit through the phone and before we got on is that you're a Duke Blue Devil. You told the people a little, but you are a sports guy. You like the Notre Dame Fighting Irish on one side. That's the football. And then you're a Duke Blue Devil on the basketball side. And talk to me about Duke and all the Dookie hoopla, the Cameron crazies. What made you a Duke Blue Devil? Talk to me a little about these.
Well, I became a Duke Blue Devil fan because, like any other little girl watching Sports Center or a game with their dad, um, at the time Bobby Hurley was playing, um, and I thought he was cute. I was like 7, 8, maybe a little bit younger. And so I became a Duke fan because of Bobby Hurley being cute. Little did I know I would be where I'm at right now as far as um, going through it with them all. You know, Chris Collins hurt his ankle during the North Carolina game his senior year. I was 8 or 9, and I walked around with a limp because I was having, and I told everybody I was having sympathy pains. Some people might think I'm psycho, a little bit psycho about it. But I, when I graduated college, I moved to 15 minutes outside of Durham because that's where I'd always wanted to live was Durham. And so that's where I started my teaching career. So I was 15 minutes from campus. Um, and it's funny, I'm actually um, friends with Nolan Smith and his wife. And then his sister, Sydney, and I are really good friends. And so she was actually at the game last night. And so as I'm losing my mind last night watching the first half of the game, as anybody should have, she's texted me. She's like, I'm here. I'm yelling. I'm like, listen, get the phone to John. And she's like, I'm like, get him the phone. And so it's just something that, again, when I cheered, I loved being able to be on the court. I am the only cheerleader probably at Newark High School history that has ever gotten a technical foul. And
Hold on. Not to cut you off. You got a technical foul as a cheerleader.
yeah, we were playing Zanesville, who we hate. And I hate their coach, Aaron Holt. I hated Scott Aaron Holt with all of my heart. Hated him. And we were playing at Newark. And I don't know if you've ever been to Jimmy Allen, but the cheerleaders kind of stand at an angle. And I always stood because
Yes.
I'm a mover. I always stood underneath the hoop and underneath the basket. So they called a foul on somebody, and I was not thrilled with it. So we called a cheer, and I kind of punched the official. I didn't move out of the way.
And you're right there. Like I played at Newark. I played at East. We played Newark a few
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
And I
Um,
have memories against Black. So many memories there. Man.
yeah. Yeah. Mikey was playing. And so I've never seen Jeff Quackenbush be so mad at me. And I worked for Quack. I was his office aide, and I did a lot of stuff with Cat Camp. And to this day, that same year, we were playing at Gahanna, and I had a paper with me because I was scrapbooking at the time, and I had a Duke scrapbook, and I gave it to my dad, and he was sitting up top of the stands at Gahanna, in their old gym. So I mean, the visitor stands weren't that high, and it was a close game. I mean, Gahanna had a couple kids. I think that was the year that Tom Izzo got his first guy from Gahanna, and so I mean, and it was a close game. The officials were horrible, and I'm yelling on the sideline cheering, and all of a sudden, a call gets made, and a paper comes flying across Quackenbush's head. Now Quack is 6'8", 6'9", 6'10". I mean, he's a tall guy. It's his first year coaching. First year as the head coach. He coached under Gary Walters for years. And so I noticed my paper on the floor, and my dad got pissed and launched the paper. So that's one of Quackenbush's favorite stories to tell. When I walk in, he's always like, "Do you have a paper?" And I'm like, "Shut up." But I'm like out on the court, like gathering up the paper because I was like, I need this for my scrapbook. Like we just gotten beat by Casey Jacobson at Stanford, or just beaten them by like 2, and it was a really close game the night before, and I needed the paper, so I got it before I had it on the bus to Gahanna. But to say we're passionate fans is something. But yeah, I mean, yeah.
Amazing. When you think of Duke basketball, you think of the Blue Bloods, national championships. Of course, you think of Coach K and his excellence. But I think when you think of Duke basketball now, a lot of people, I think, when it comes to the coach at Duke, John Shire, they forget one of the 3-point shooters that everyone feared when he played at Duke. If I'm not mistaken, won a national championship. Was one of the top 3-point shooters in the ACC, multiple years, All-American. I mean, his resume, and you mentioned Nolan Smith as well. When they played together, you're talking about a backcourt that had an IQ of 1 to none. Now, when you see this Duke team this year, and you see, I believe that Nolan Smith on that bench, if I'm not mistaken, with that Duke team, and you see some of the intangibles that this team has, is there anything that you can kind of recall from that championship team with Shire and this team that they have this year? Tell me about this team you see.
Yeah, Nolan is actually now the head coach at Tennessee State this year. He had left the program and went to work for Kenny Payne at Louisville for a couple of years.
Okay.
A lot of people might not know that Nolan's dad passed away unexpectedly. And he was a big Louisville player, and Nolan was very young. And so he wanted to get back to Louisville. That's where they were from. When his dad played there and he was working there, and Kenny Payne was a close family friend. So Nolan took that jump to leave Duke and go coach with Kenny, but he's now the head coach at Tennessee State, and they're doing awesome. I'm actually going to go down and see them Martin Luther King weekend.
Send my prayers, even though, send my prayers, man. Never know.
And so, one thing that John has done differently, which I struggle with, and it's just in recent years, Coach K always had former players on his bench. And John did for a while, and now we just have Chris Carrawell, who's our associate head coach, and then Tyler Thornton, who's back as an assistant coach, who took Will Avery's position this year. And we have Emmanuel Dildy, who was at Oklahoma, and then Evan Brads, who I believe was at Utah at the Jazz. And so we've got some new non-Duke people on our bench, which is it's still weird for me to see, because I'm used to looking down the line and seeing Duke point guard, Duke point guard, Duke big. And, so that's kind of been a change in what John has done. But I think still the culture is still there from Coach K. You always saw Coach K with his hand like this, and he's just cussing the kid out right next to him. Again, back in the day where you could just tear into somebody's butt over a play. In my group chat last night, I was like, Coach K had pulled all these 5 starters and played the towel guys at this point last night. If you want to play, go, because these jokers aren't doing it. We've had a rough 4-game stretch of effort. of not meeting those expectations. And Coach K has written multiple books on teams and leadership and what it means to be a team. And so I laugh because I'm old. I'm an old school person. I love a team shoe. And it's weird for me to see everybody wearing whatever shoe. It's just weird for me.
Weird. Yeah.
And so it's just something that I'm old heart about. Like I love a team shoe. When your shirt's not tucked in, I get mad. I'm just like, you look sloppy. Like I know you're out there playing a game, but let's we're Duke. Look like we're Duke. Act like we're Duke. When Coach K announced his retirement and announced that John was taking over, he got a lot of hate for it and the farewell tour and blah blah blah. But what a lot of people don't know either is that is when he brought in John brought in and started interviewing Rachel Baker, who is our NIL person, our director of I forget her actual title, but we brought her in from Nike. And Coach K has a great relationship with Phil Knight out at Nike. He's got his own gym out at Nike headquarters out in Oregon. And so, bringing another female into this position, she's our general manager. And so she was the first GM in college basketball, came in, to help John with that transition, the farewell tour. It wasn't a farewell tour. Coach K knew exactly what he was doing. He's a genius. John was recruiting anybody anyway, but he wanted John to make sure he was recruiting the kids he wanted, not the kids Coach K wanted, and to set up and build his program. Coach K didn't go to a game at Cameron that first year at all, because he wanted John to be John and to do what John wanted to do. Which I think it takes a lot. I mean, you coached there for 42 years and you're stepping back and the court's named after you. You're the one that finally got air conditioning brought into Cameron, because it gets hot and it got hot and, people crazies are passing out all the time. Fans are passing out all the time, and so setting John up for his own success, I think is what has made John where we're at right now and where we have been. Recruiting is still insane. I think we got so lucky last year to be able to witness those 5 starters every game. Kaman Malawach, Sion James, who was a senior transfer in to bring in that leadership from Tulane that nobody really knew about. And here's, this big bruiser that is playing for the Charlotte Hornets right now. No one in a million years would have thought that Sion James was going to start at an NBA level or even get NBA minutes. Blessed to have Cooper Flagg and Con Knipple and who did I miss? Bill Foster, who had the game of his life in the second half last night. And had a tough season because he got replaced by Tyrese Proctor, our Australian player that, as a starter. Tyrese ended up starting a majority of the year because Caleb just was struggling so bad. And Tyrese, came in and took that on, and Caleb was great off the bench. And so I think we got really spoiled with that team last year. They lost 4 games all year. And the way they played together was just so special. It reminded me a ton of that 2001 team with Carlos Boozer, with Mike Dunleavy, with Chris Carrawell, and just amazing. And Shane Battier, oh my God, how can you forget Shane Battier? Just greatness all around, and just the joy of playing together, and everything was so natural. That's what Coach K teams were. And again, I've mentioned it before, like, these 18 to 22-year-olds aren't Carlos Boozer or Shane Battier back in the early 2000s. It's not Bobby Hurley. It's not Chris Carrawell. It's not Steve Wojciechowski, who's slapping that floor and playing with a bloody nose the entire game. You know what I mean? Like, times have changed, and to get the most out of these 18 to 22-year-old kids on a daily basis is hard. And as Notre Dame fans and as Duke fans, we have high expectations. And you get those fair weather fans, like, oh, I just like Duke because you've got Cam Boozer on the team this year. Last year, you've had Coop, or RJ and Zion when they were there. playing together, or Paolo, just the past 5 years recruiting has, not that it ever lacked, but has just been on absolute fire. It's as a Duke fan, it's great to see that Coach K retired and didn't leave the program, because he left it into the person that was going to do the best to continue on and create his own legacy at that point.
Agree. And when you was just mentioning so much at Duke, when it comes to some of the former players, you mentioned one of the new names, and it's a boozer.
Cam.
That boozer, Cam. Talk to me about Cam, and then the brother next
Yeah.
beside him that a lot of people forget about. I
hmm
call them the Booze Brothers,
hmm
because people think of booze and they think of drinking, but they
hmm
giving you booze with a splash, and it's on the
hmm
court. Talk to me about the Booze Brothers.
Yeah,
What's your
Caden is
thought?
actually starting at point guard right now to kind of take some of that ball handling off of Caleb, so Caleb can be more of a shooter and a driver. Um, Cam and Caden have played together forever, obviously. And when you grow up and your dad is Carlos Boozer, one thing you're going to have is fundamentals and footwork. And Cam's got great footwork down on the block. Caden is a guard, and they're not much shorter. Caden's only a couple inches shorter than Cam. But they played Columbus. I forget, it was Columbus something, but out of Miami, and they won 4 state titles in Florida. And they weren't at IMG, they weren't at Mount Verd, they were playing um, together in Miami. You know what I mean? And so they weren't at one of those specialty schools. Um, and I'm sure Columbus is one of a typical specialty school in Florida for athletes, but you don't hear about it as often as you hear about um, IMG and Mount Verd. Just kind of like Chaminade Madonna, where Jeremiah Smith is from, for Ohio State, played football there. That is a public school. That is a Miami-Dade public school. And so, Prolific Prep has now moved to West Palm Beach out of California. And we've got a kid from Upper Arlington that's down there right now. Alex Smith was at Upper Arlington, and he transferred down to play at Prolific this year, who's already committed to Ohio State. And so, where was I going? Cam and Caden have played against the best of the best their entire life. And it's fun to see them on breaks together, because Caden knows where Cam is going, and Cam knows where Caden is going. It's that twin telepathy, and I've played together forever. And it's fun to see, kind of shake each other off. And it's just fun to see. Carlos stood the entire game last night. I could not be a parent watching my kid play that high level intensity at Duke, any big time program, and just keep myself calm, cool, and collected, because words were flying out of my mouth last night. And it's just, and again, I bring back to, I watched Carlos win a championship. And now his kids are there, and they have a chance to win a championship. I do see that question. I think Cam is one and done. I think Caden will be back.
You think Cam is one and done? You think Caden will be back? And when we speak on that, Cam being one and done, Caden being back, do you think Duke goes to the Final Four, or do you think they can win the championship this season? Or do you think this team is better than last year's team? Talk to me about this. Me personally,
last year's team was
I thought this team was number one a couple weeks ago when they ranked Arizona number one based on the battle tests that they have had. I don't know.
John did a great job scheduling this year, because we did not. The ACC was down last year, and again, we can talk about conferences later. But our preseason and non-conference schedule was not where it needed to be able to compete. We were 30. We lost 4 games last year. We got to the Final Four game and had Houston beat, and we're up. And then we just played not to lose. And I think that's a young coach not quite sure how to change that perspective of young guys' minds in a big situation. I mean, we started 4 freshmen and a junior. Coop turned 18 in the beginning of, or at the very end of January last year. So he was 17 when the season started. You know, Kaman Malawach came over and had only played organized basketball for 4 or 5 years before he comes to Duke and is doing what he's doing, you know, and just loving every bit of it. I think personally, this year's team on paper looks better. Last year's team performed better at this point in the season. This year's team went through that gauntlet of our preseason non-conference schedule. You know, losing to Texas Tech, we did exactly what we did against Houston. We played not to lose, and we lost. We had no reason to lose that game, and we did. The last 4 games, our defense, with the exception of the second half last night, our defense has been horrible. Absolutely, hands down. We're not calling out screens. We're not switching quick enough. We're not closing out. Just been horrible, and that has not been up to Duke standards. I'm friends with a couple of guys who actually do some podcasts just on Duke basketball and have weekly meetings with John. And I was like, did you ask him if he's going to fix anything? Like, is he tearing into butts? Like, what? Because I'm over it. Like, we're over not seeing defense being played. You know, we struggled. We should have beat Lipscomb by 60 and struggled with them in that first half and took the second half away. You know, we should have beaten Texas Tech. We struggled against Georgia Tech, who, again, for all of the geniuses at Duke, I would love for somebody to take a study and do a study on why every team that plays against Duke shoots like the 96 Bulls every time they play us. Without fail. Georgia Tech made 3 3-pointers on the season coming in to play us and made 6 in the first 3 minutes of the game. Like, how does that happen? Louisville last night, the Khalifa guy made 1 the whole year and went 4 for 4.
Crazy.
I mean, they were shooting into the Atlantic Ocean. They couldn't miss. You know, our defense wasn't helping. I laughed because my nephew plays middle school basketball, and his team got beat 8-48. And I was like, I promise you that 8-point loss, they played better defense. They had to have played better defense than what I saw Duke playing last night. Like, it was just, it's just ridiculous. But we have such a high expectation. And I'm really bad at, because they're my boys, they're my babies. If you ask Mr. Brown, if you ask Isaiah, I talk about them like they're my own. And so I get mad like a parent would, I feel like, at times. And so it's just one of those situations where last year's team was better. This year's team should be better based on paper and stats. And I think we made a turn to that last night. I think we finally got our heads out of our butts and realized just because we're Duke, people aren't going to back away from us. And again, we're starting another young team. And, you know, having Caleb Foster's leadership, Malik Brown has been a godsend transfer from Syracuse for the past 2 years. You know, and it's just, we still just have a lot of young guys on our team. Our guys last year, we started 4 freshmen, but they didn't play like freshmen. We've got some freshmen playing like freshmen right now. And we even have Isaiah Evans. God bless him. I love you, Slim, but sometimes I just need you to not just chuck it up because you think you can.
Understandable. And seeing where you guys are, ranked number 6, 14-1, coming off a big win at Louisville. I think, you know, for me, I have you guys in a Final Four, not knowing what the Final Four look like. That's just where I'm at right now. I went from being a Kentucky fan last year to talk about AJ DeBanza once I seen him sign during college football season. I'm now a BYU fan.
Mm-mm.
That's how big the signing was for me personally. I've been watching their basketball. I haven't really done, you know, a lot of research on their history,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm going to do that myself this year just to get a little more in tune to BYU basketball, because it takes a lot for, you know, be the number 1 overall recruit and come to a school like BYU instead of others. So,
and I think that had piece with their new coach, coming from a professional team. And I believe their coach had a lot of success working with bigs. And you don't get that a lot in college basketball anymore. A lot of coaches that were a big or are able to work with bigs, there are a lot of point guards, a lot of forwards, but you don't get a lot of guys that are able to coach bigs and truly coach bigs up, which is typically why you have an assistant who might have been a big. Or, at one point in time, Chris Collins and Steve Wojciechowski were coaching the bigs at Duke. They were two the best point guards at Duke and Duke history, and they're got football pads out, the big tackling pads, and are trying to get the ball at practice, slamming them into the bigs and things like that to try to coach them up and simulate what it's like down amongst the trees, if you will.
Yeah, definitely. And just a quick thought. I know we spoke on Notre Dame. I know we spoke on Duke basketball. Before we get out of here, we haven't went into one of the questions I know that's changed sports. What's your thoughts on that? NIL, one of the biggest things I think has changed a lot in sports, both sides, basketball, football, tremendously, I feel. Just give us your thoughts on NIL.
I like team shoes. I think that kind of sums it up. I'm old school. You're getting a free college education. And I understand you're entertaining us, and I understand that people are exploiting you, and I think there should be some level of reimbursement. I think it's gotten completely out of hand. I think the portal has gotten completely out of hand. We've got Chad Baker-Mazara, who's at USC now, who's damn near 30, playing for his 8th college basketball program, just trying to make the money. Hang it up. It's time. Like Perry Ellis played longer at Kansas, and he didn't get an NIL deal. And it's so
he was good.
He was good. And I think it's taking a toll on coaches, especially in basketball. If you look, Tom Izzo, Bill Self, why are names not coming up? Rick Barnes. Those are some of the older guys that are left, some of the OGs that are left, that are hanging out, Patino and Calipari. When Cal is talking about Scott Drew at Baylor bringing in a player that signed an NBA contract and played 2 ways to come in and be able to play immediately at Baylor, when you're pissing Cal off, I don't know if he's mad about it or if he's mad he didn't figure it out first. You know what I mean? But either way, something has to be done about it. Something has to be, especially, I think football does a little bit better of a job managing the NIL and the portal, because they have the committee, and it's a little bit different, I think, where college basketball, it is an absolute free for all. And, they've talked about getting a czar forever. But there're just no rules, it seems like. Like you can transfer from division to division and not lose eligibility. You can go play pro. You can play pro overseas and come over and still have eligibility. And we've got a kid on our team right now, Dame Sarr, played pro in Spain from Italy. But he was 14 and 15 and 16, which is different. Then a 23-year-old guy that's got drafted 2 years ago, played G League, went overseas and decided, I don't want to do it. I want to go back to college. Like it's hard for me to support that, but I'm just so old school still. The transfer portal, again, that plays into NIL shopping. Players are announcing that I re-signed to stay at my you didn't re-sign anything. You got in there, and that's where you committed to play. And if you don't want to play there, then get your release and go. But you got to sit out of here, or you got to give that NIL money back, and figure out life. Like there's life after college football. There's life after professional football. There's life after college basketball, and there's life after professional basketball. Not everybody's LeBron James. and going to play till they're 42, 43, 44 years old. And I think people are tired of seeing LeBron because he's struggling now. You know what I mean? Like they're like, dude, hang it up. Like you gave us a ton of great years.
Give us that farewell tour.
Yeah,
Man.
you know,
That's what I'm ready for.
You gave us those years. You made your announcement. You came back. You left. You went back. Like we're good. You know, and it's funny because LeBron and I are the same age. And when ESPN put him on that cover first, when Jay Billis and them came to do their first game, televised game, I was in Durham at Duke, at a basketball game, going to the Duke Virginia game, and up here you could not find the ESPN magazines with him on it, and so we went into the Barnes and Noble down there and bought them all because you couldn't find them up here. And you know, people are like, why are you buying that ESPN magazine? And we're like, this guy's name's LeBron. He's gonna be the next, like he's it. And people are like, oh no, we've never heard of him, blah blah blah. And then boom, and people, you know, and it's like,
told you so.
Yeah, it's like, you know, but it just, I think there definitely need to be some more stipulations, some more limits, definitely some more control from a committee, a person. I mean, we all know that NCAA is all about one thing and one thing only, and it's money. And unfortunately, that is where we're at right now, and it's hurting kids, and it's hurting some kids, and some kids are not hurting from it. But I mean, look at Cooper Flagg. He just turned 19, and he's got all this money from the Mavs. And what are you doing with it? I look back at Jay Will, you know, graduated from Duke, get drafted by the Bulls, and you go buy a motorcycle and in your career. Yeah. When young people have stupid amounts of money and no leadership or nobody to help, stupid things happen. And Jay Will's mom was a principal. He had a great family, and he still chose to be stupid. And he'll tell you about it till this day. He's like, I was stupid. I made a dumb choice, and I ruined my career, and I don't ever get to do what I wanted to do. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of that situation that it needs to be regulated more so at the NCAA for sure.
I totally agree with you on that. For me, you know, we talk about it all the time. Different thoughts on them. One thing we come with is they definitely need to get a hang to it. You know, it's a lot of athletes, a lot of kids, and they forget that they're students first. Mm-hmm. You got to be a student before you're an athlete, and sometimes you get, you know, lost in what they are with all this money out in the world to just give away because of a sport they play. And like you said, it can't be forgotten of what they are actually doing after their sport. There's life after it. So we can't not put them through the right things, the necessary steps. And I think definitely need to be held, you know, accountable for those things, and people need to come together and find out the best situation for this moving forward, which is something we talk about and, like I said, agree upon. At this point, that was all the questions that I have for you for this evening. I greatly appreciate you taking the time out your evening. I know you got to be up and be that great educator that you are, and I do want to make sure you get your amount of rest that you need.
I'm up way past my bedtime.
I know if you don't get that rest, you know, it's definitely going to be a different day, but I know you'll make sure the day is bright for those kids anyway, as you always have done throughout your tenure and throughout your lifetime working with the children as well.
Yes, thank you so much for having me on. I was kind of shocked when Mr. Brown texted me, and I was like, what are you talking about?
Yes. This is what I do. I love bringing conversations to the people, to the world, and what we do now. 2026, like I said, I definitely have you on for more talks, Duke basketball. We have our college basketball shows as well for more in-depth talk and analysis about what we do on those days. Also, other than that, is there anyone that you would like to thank, as I always do, during this time that you were, you know, brought into the world to be able to just do what you do? Anyone over your time that you would like to thank, that anyone may be able to watch or get back and say thank you for what you've done for me throughout my life, or anything at all?
I mean, my dad is my biggest supporter, my best friend, but he listen, we don't do technology with him because then I have to go fix things.
Oh, you can still tell him live that way.
He knows. He's actually at a high school basketball game tonight. He's at Notre Catholic in Mount Vernon, and then he's going to Pitt Central and Reynoldsburg tomorrow. So.
Yeah, the banger, as we're going to call it. We call those bangers. He's on bangers on top of bangers. So, definitely it'll be with him in one of those times, man.
Yeah.
But like I said, man, it's great having you, and can't wait to have you on for more talks when we're talking about the Duke Blue Devils in basketball, as well as our coming 2026 preview. We're going to put you together with postgame and have you on for one of those, and then have you both respectively, separately, to have your talks as well on what you think about the football season coming up as well. Other than that, that was my show for the evening, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you subscribe to all the channels you see at the bottom. We have at WTP for Life. We have SEC Sean. We have Postgame 86. We have City League TV. That is on Facebook as well. Our WTP Sports Dudes Facebook page. Also, you can tap into that if you go under the group section, look up WTP Sports Dudes. You'll see our group name, and you can follow that. And feel free to post and have some thoughts in there, even if you want to say something to us for us to come out and talk about on the show. If you don't want to talk about it live, if it's something that we need to talk about for you, that's okay with us. Make sure you follow MossBurgh Podcast as well. Got One Take Zaya also, and myself, MossBurgh, Level Up Sports Team. Make sure you reach out through email, text, and I'm on IG and Twitter as well. X, formerly known as Twitter as well. You see my email, you see my number. If you want to have a conversation with MossBurgh, feel free to reach out. I'm your guy to bring that one of a kind, in-depth conversation as well. So with those things being said, as T1 say, we was in the building and we out. We throw up the peace signs here, Ms. Graham. So if you could tell the people peace, we appreciate it, man. Love and hair grease, man. And until next time, we'll be live tomorrow and the day after. So stay tuned in. 7:45 p.m. tomorrow evening. Thanks a lot. Peace.